Every time you turn on the TV to watch a movie, a show, or even a documentary, you might see one of the most famous actors and have to ask the question, how did they become famous? Why did they become famous? Many times I have found myself asking the same question about Titanic, the most famous ship of all time, which quite a lot of people can't pinpoint when or how got so famous, and most importantly, if she even deserves it. Does Titanic even deserve to be famous? Before we can even answer this question, we must first figure out when and how Titanic gained its fame. My greatest guess is from the amount of books, movies, magazines, among other things, that have been made from the disaster, which have spread the word of Titanic and her fate. Movies and books have been made on a lot of ship sinkings, but what separates Titanic from others is the amount of popularity the movies and books made on Titanic have gotten. For example, James Cameron's Titanic is one of the most well-known and influential movies ever made, not because the movie is about Titanic, but because the movie is a big blockbuster with a high budget made by a director with a good background. These kinds of movies draw people who have never even heard of Titanic before into her history, and because that movie was so good, winning 11 Oscars, Titanic has stuck with those people. James Cameron's Titanic is definitely what was responsible for the boom in Titanic fame over the past 20 years, but the reality is, Titanic has been famous ever since she sank on April 15th, 1912. Why is that, though? Well, it's because of the circumstances of the sinking. Titanic was classified as one of the safest ships ever built, being a modern wonder of size and luxury, yet sank on her maiden voyage from an iceberg of all things. The most tragic part about all this, though, was the fact that she didn't even carry enough lifeboats for all lives on board, resulting in 1,500 lives being lost, which could have easily been avoided. All of these reasons are why Titanic has stuck with so many people over a tragedy like the Wilhelm Gustloff, for example, which lost 6 times more lives than Titanic. I do think, though, that it's unfair to straight up ignore other ship sinkings, which is something I feel has happened in recent years. Other ship sinkings, while in the long run not having as much of an impact, are still important events that should not be ignored because of Titanic's sinking. Especially because some ship sinkings, like the Wilhelm Gustloffs and Lee Jula's, have had even more lives lost. Others, like Lusitania's and Empress of Ireland's, have had worse circumstances, since both Lusitania and Empress of Ireland foundered in less than 20 minutes, giving passengers an almost impossible time to escape. While I think Titanic sinking was a very much important event and should not be ignored, I also think other ship sinkings should be acknowledged for the disasters that they were. Titanic might be the most famous ship of all time, but she is not famous because she was innovative. She is famous because of her sinking and the spread of it from movies and books. Titanic and the Olympic class in general are definitely not innovative ships for their time, especially compared to the ships they are competing against. The Lusitania class, consisting of Lusitania and Mauretania, are the best examples of this, being built years before Titanic and Olympic, yet overall having more modern features and innovations. Titanic and Olympic are basically larger versions of past ships White Star Line had made, which is something very popular for the company. The Olympic class are definitely good and even great ships, but they are definitely not anything new for the industry. Now, like I said before, I do think Titanic is a good ship. I like her design, her interior, and I think she has a very unique and enduring story. With all that said though, does Titanic deserve to be famous? Well, yes, or at least I think she does. While I don't like the Titanic sinking has overshadowed so many other ship disasters, I still believe the Titanic deserves her fame. She was, and still is, the most infamous ship disaster of all time, which reshaped how people thought about big ocean liners like Titanic. It made people rethink if these ships were really safe or not, and caused the restructuring for the safety systems of not only ocean liners, but all ships. While I do believe that other ship disasters should get just as much spotlight and attention as Titanic's, I still strongly believe the Titanic deserves to be famous.